Well, now that we're getting into late spring and early summer, we know that a lot of those early cool season annuals, such as pansies, for example, have faded out, and we need to replace those. And also now that our bulb foliage has begun to go ahead and die down and yellow, and it's made all that food that we want to feed our bulbs for next year, it's really time to come in and replace those early season annual and bulb beds with something that will go ahead and last for the rest of the summer and give us a lot of color. So that's what we're doing on this bed here by our gate entrance. And one of the things we want to really think about is maybe using some choices of plants that might be a little bit different or unusual. Of course, the standard plants such as petunia and periwinkle and begonia, and those plants are also very, very good. But there are also some really other good plants out there, and so we need to keep in mind really the purpose and what we really want to show in some of these beds throughout the summer. Because keep in mind now, these are going to be here until the frost, and so we really want those to look nice. Well, there are a lot, as I said, there are a lot of different choices that one can choose. Some of them more standards, but here in this bed, we've got a particular choice that we've already decided what we're going to do. And we have a reason for choosing that, but just let me show you some alternatives in addition to the traditional plants such as petunia and periwinkle and begonia and those types of plants. One of the things that you might want to consider is a plant that I really like, and it's called the fan flower or the scaevola. The fan flower is a low growing plant. It fills in very, very quickly. It has a really nice array of solid blue flowers all over the plant. And you could plant those plants 12 to 14 inches apart actually in your bed, and you would expect a pretty good cover fairly quickly on these because they are very, very fast growing. This also makes a good trailing plant or a good hanging basket plant. But as we get later into the season now and we buy some of these plants, you may find that the plants are not as compact as this particular one is. In fact, you may find a scaevola or a fan flower or some other plants that are really trailing out like this. And we want to encourage those plants to be a little bit more bushy. And so while it may be hard to do on these plants, you need to come back in and kind of clip those back. Just give them a little bit of a haircut, and then preferably do it close to a leaf that is an axillary leaf there, or a bud, and that way they will bush on out, and that will give you a nice compact plant then such as this. It will be quite so leggy. Another good choice that you might want to use in your garden is another plant called a melopodion. The melopodion is a plant that gets a little bit taller, but it loves the heat and the sun. It loves the dry conditions, and this plant will go ahead and make a bush plant. It's sort of a daisy looking yellow flower. It has a nice green foliage. It will just literally be covered with yellow flowers all season long and really make a nice addition to your garden. So you may want to try the melopodion as well as an alternative. Another good alternative is one that we call the yellow bidens. The yellow bidens is another plant that again likes the heat and the sun. It actually kind of thrives on poor conditions. And this is a plant that I think you would really enjoy also because it gives you some different color. Another plant that you might want to choose, and this is one of the plants we're using today in this particular garden, is the cup flower or the Nerimbergia. The cup flower is actually a plant that I would call a tender perennial, in that in the southern part of the state, in the south and southeastern United States, this is really a perennial plant that stays sort of semi-evergreen all winter long. As we get further north, it may begin to die back down in the fall after a couple of heavy freezes, but then come back the next year. As we get even further north and in the northwest part of the state and in northern states, it's probably not going to be a perennial, so it may have to be grown as an annual. But the cup flower is an excellent plant again to give you a nice blue color all season long. So that's one of the plants that we're going to put in this particular garden today. We're going to use the cup flower, and we also have another plant that's a little bit of a different type of plant that we want to use as one of our choices here. And this particular plant is called the Exora, or also the jungle daisy. And as you can see, this is a tropical type of plant. And we've gotten these in large containers. This plant definitely is not a winter hardy plant because it has a tropical foliage, but the reason we want to use this plant along with the cup flower or the blue Nimbergia is because we want to complement the little garden just on the other side. Right down here is our red, white, and blue garden. This is close to a gate, so we want some height to it, and so that's why we've chosen these particular plants. I don't really like to plant plants such as this unless, first of all, I kind of space those and see how I want to place and to arrange them. And so we will set these plants out in a fashion that perhaps will kind of give us some idea of what we want them to look like. And I always like to kind of alternate the space and the lining up of these plants. For example, if we have 3 plants, we may put a couple of them toward the back and one toward the front. That gives us just a little bit of variation in the way these plants are set. And then we can come in with our blue cup flower and place those also around that plant and kind of get some idea of what it's going to look like before we ever set these, because my experience has been, and I'm sure it's been with yours, that if you look at those plants before you plant them and get some idea of what they're going to look like, and then you want to move them around, it's going to be a lot easier than it is once you get them planted. So I would encourage you to maybe choose some different plants, kind of space and arrange them first and see what they're going to look like before you actually plant. Another thing I like to do is I like to plant plants such as this in what I call odd numbers. For some reason they just seem to work out much better, like 3s or 5s or 7s. So we'll have like the three jungle daisy, and then the 3 Nimbergia here, 3 to 5 cup flower Nimbergia here, and then some more down there. When you're planting container plants too, such as a large plant like this jungle daisy, we want to always be sure and take a look at that root ball before actually we start planting that plant as well. And this one, it's probably going to be okay, but oftentimes on a potted plant or a container plant such as this, you'll see the plant roots beginning to grow in a circular motion like this. And when that happens, oftentimes when you plant that, it's going to continue to grow in a circular motion because that pattern has been established. And so as a result, you may find that this plant does not perform as well. So if you really have a root-bound plant such as this, you can simply come in and do some clipping of the roots around, kind of interrupt that circular pattern, particularly if you have a woody hard root such as this one. And then that will force those roots, once you've planted it, to begin growing outward and make a much better root system. And then of course this plant you'd want to plant this in a hole at least as deep, if not a couple of inches deeper than the root ball on the plant, and several inches wider. Fill it in and water it well. So I think if you give a little thought in planting before you plant some of these plants in those gardens that you're wanting to replace right now, both of what are you looking for, what's my color scheme, how are they going to complement each other, and what do I really want to show, and then kind of put those plants out and look at them first, you'll be a lot more successful with them.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.